we continue in this Easter season to see how the new life of the risen Lord has an impact on our lives and what we should be attentive to as we pick up the graces that come in this season in order for us to share in the resurrected life of Jesus. And what's interesting is that as Jesus tells us that he is the vine, we are the branches, we also hear that the Father is the vine grower who prunes us so that we bear much fruit. And so today, let's look at this first reading that we hear about the early church. Because there's some pruning that goes on there, I think that also has some impact on the way that we think about our lives. Notice that the real problem for them is accepting Paul. Paul was the one who, in fact, held the cloaks of those who were stoning Stephen. He also brought in the officials to persecute the church. In fact, on his way to Damascus, he was going there to prosecute and persecute Christians. And so when he said that he now was a disciple, a follower of Jesus, they doubted that, and they were ready to reject him. And it is, I think, important for us to realize that we too have that tendency, maybe not to be so accepting of people who have the impulse to change in their life. So often, we allow ourselves to reduce an individual to the worst thing that they have done. And in that way, we easily discard them. We do not see the other good aspects of their life. We take that one thing that maybe has hurt us or a way in which has repulsed us, and we say, no, that person is someone we're going to reject, much like that community did in the early church. But it is God is the one who helps and brings to new life those that he gives the grace of conversion, and it is not for us to do the pruning. It's up to the Lord to do that. But there's also another impulse so often that we give into, and that is even though someone doesn't do something terribly wrong, maybe they fall short of our expectations. And we have a kind of perfectionism in our own hearts with regard to others. If they just fall short of the mark. I've seen where children suffer sometimes from the great pressures that their parents put on them, maybe in sports or academics or in the arts, and push them to the point where even though they excel, if they're not perfect, they're criticized. That too is something that we have to be very careful of, a kind of perfectionist spirit where we do not allow others to grow at their own pace, to in fact move forward, because we have taken on the job of pruning rather than allowing the Lord to give them the grace in their own period of time. And I think the third kind of tendency that we have to be aware of is that we do sometimes look at the faults of others through the lens of our own faults. Psychologists call this projection. We see the faults of others so very easily because we're reluctant to admit that those are our own faults as well. And so instead of recognizing where we need to grow, we distract from that and project those faults on others so very easily. Today, the Lord gives us the grace of the resurrection by a pruning that should take place, to put aside the rejection of others because of their faults, because of things that they have done wrong, or evaluating their life in terms of the worst thing that they have done, or also putting aside a kind of perfectionism that really stifles the growth of others simply because they don't live up to our expectations and we want them to be perfect. And finally, that tendency in life to project on others the faults that we know and those defects that we know are part of our life. So today, let the grace of God prune us in those ways. You know, one of the greatest images of the vine and branches naturally is in a forest area, Fish Lake, Utah. There is an aspen tree that has 47,000 branches. Those branches are trees. It's the largest living organism in the world that covers over 100 acres, one that weighs 13,000 pounds. And yet, all of those trees are genetically marked by the same tree, and they're all one organism. They all receive life through one tree, just as we receive one life through the vine of Christ. And so it is a reminder to us to allow the Lord once again to give us life, and be more concerned about how that life is coursing through our veins, through our life, rather than maybe picking up the difficulties and defects that others have. So let us pay attention to the new life that comes in each one of us in this season, and let the pruning up to God.